Welcome back to UK Flicks, your ultimate home for the most touching celebrity journeys. In the warm glow of reality TV fame, Dr. Jen Arnold and Bill Klein captured hearts as the little couple, a family built on love, resilience, and overcoming every challenge together. But behind the cameras, their daughter Zoey was quietly writing her own story. What started as innocent secret dates with a charming young man named Zach soon turned into something far more powerful and life-changing. Hidden from the spotlight, stolen moments in quiet rooms blossomed into deep love. Then came the news that would shake everything. Zoey was pregnant. As her due date drew near, the secret could no longer stay buried. The family that always faced life united now faced their biggest test yet. What followed were raw conversations, difficult decisions, and an unforgettable announcement. Jen Arnold revealed that Zoey and Zach would marry, a stunning $650,000 luxury house from her parents, a $350,000 dream car from Zach, and even a generous $10,000 gift from TLC turned their private joy into public celebration. On July 20th, wedding bells will ring as Zoey prepares to welcome their baby. This is the emotional, true-feeling journey of love, family, and new beginnings you've been waiting for. Stay with UK Flicks as we dive deep into every heartfelt chapter. All great love stories start with a spark, but for Zoey Klein, that spark had to burn itself out. In the unforgiving public view, you grow up on TV. You share every milestone, every laugh, every tear with millions of people you don't know. As Zoey entered her late teens, she wanted something that was all her own. That's when Zach entered her life. Zach didn't care about the cameras of reality TV or the celebrity that came with being the little couple. Zoey's razor-sharp wit, her compassionate heart, and her independent personality had taken him. Utterly, Zoey and Zach chose to keep their relationship private and away from the prying eyes of the internet and media outlets as they wanted to protect their bond from quick judgments. It was hard to go out to eat at local restaurants or go to the movies without being seen by the eagle-eyed fans of the show. So, they found creative ways to bond behind closed doors, where their dates were not public park meets, but gatherings in a secretly appointed room on the enormous family grounds. These secret room dates were their safe haven. Zoey and Zach spent hours surrounded by old books, cozy blankets, and the soft glow of a desk lamp, talking about their greatest dreams, their favorite music, and what they envisioned for their futures. Zach would bring in contraband of her favorite snacks, and they would go and watch movies or listen to records away from the bustle of the house. At first, Zach was just a very close and courtier friend of Jen and Bill's, regularly stopping by to help out with tasks or just to hang out quietly. The wider family circle did not really have an idea of the depth of emotional anchor that was building between the two young adults. They fell hopelessly in love in the quiet room, away from the world's pressures. They had established a foundation of absolute trust that had kept this beautiful secret world safe for months. Weeks turned into months. The secret refuge that Zoey and Zach had fashioned in the house was beginning to feel less like a temporary hiding place and more like the bedrock of their universe. They had survived the pressure of outside speculation. But a true turning point was fast approaching, one that careful planning could not possibly have prepared them for. It had started on a peaceful Tuesday morning when Zoey had woken up feeling very different. She adored the high-energy, lively lifestyle. Normally, now, it was exhausting and she felt suddenly out of nowhere a great feeling of tiredness. At first, she attempted to put it down to a passing infection or stress from her hectic schedule, but days passed and small changes in her body were impossible to ignore. Her heart raced hard and her hand trembled. One quiet afternoon, when she was alone at home, Zoey decided to take a private test. The bathroom was quiet and the wait for the results an eternity. When the clear indicator was there showing she was pregnant, the world stopped. A tide of feelings swept her. A feeling of amazement, of sudden dread, of knowing deep inside that her girlhood was ending with the birth of motherhood was tremendous. First, she called Zach. He heard the tremor in her voice and walked straight over to meet her in their own hidden chamber. When she told him, the first expression that passed across Zach's face melted into enduring tenderness. He looked into her eyes, took her hands in his, and promised that whatever occurred next, they were a team. The air in the Arnold Klein house was often busy and light with the sounds of the family routine. But that night, when Zoe and Zach decided to speak up, the air grew thick with heavy, deep suspense. Zoe took a deep breath, sat down in the living room with Jen and Bill, looked to Zach for comfort, and told the secret they had been keeping for months. The last words came out of her mouth and the audience fell into a startled silence, and she was pregnant. Not only had there been a secret relationship for Jen and Bill, the news like a wave that crashed, a devastating crash. The desire to defend their girl, the shock of the whole thing sent a shiver through their parental hearts. This was a significant turning point for the whole family, and Bill knew it, so he gently encouraged them to stand back, take a breath, and come back later that night. And none of them will forget the family meeting that ensued that midnight. The initial shock had faded, and under the low overhead lights encircling the kitchen island, the talk grew serious, intense, and personal. There were tears, and there were hard concerns about the future, about the huge responsibility of children, and about the immense strain of public life. Jen, who has years of medical experience and her own long, hard-fought path to establishing a family, was honest about the physical and emotional cost of the journey ahead. Bill grilled Zach on whether he could see himself rising to become a supplier and partner in the long term. Zach never wavered through any of it. He stood steady with Zoe and swore he'd give his whole life to their new family. But when the clock struck midnight, the fear turned into a profound feeling of camaraderie. They realized that any fury or fear would change nothing. The innocent new life on the way was all that mattered. The family made a final decision and looked at the raw maturity and love between the two young adults. The shock and concern were over, and the atmosphere in the Arnold Klein family was shifting from acute stress to single-minded resolve. The midnight meeting had established a truth of the most fundamental kind. Families stick together no matter how unforeseen the storm. But it was a big relief to Zoe and Zach to have the emotional support of Jen and Bill as the reality of the road ahead began to sink in. They weren't a young couple courting in the shadows anymore. They were going to be parents. Their lives were now intertwined together. But if Zach was going to be as good as both Jen and Bill had made him sound in their impassioned talk, he felt he had to make his goals very plain. He wouldn't let her spend a day of her pregnancy uncertain where they stood. Less than a week after that, every family has a story the world never gets to see. Behind every smile captured by a camera, behind every public celebration, and behind every headline that flashes across a screen, there are quiet moments that shape lives forever. Some stories begin with applause. Others begin with silence. This is one of those stories. For years, the Harper family had become familiar faces to millions. Their warmth, resilience, and unwavering support for one another inspired people from every corner of the country. Viewers believed they knew everything about them because they had watched birthdays, holidays, milestones, and emotional moments unfold in front of the cameras. Yet the most important chapter of all was being written where no lens could reach. Emily Harper had spent most of her life growing up under public attention. While other children learned who they were in private, Emily discovered herself while strangers formed opinions about every smile, every decision, and every mistake. It was a strange life to live. She appreciated the love from loyal supporters, but there were days when she wished she could simply disappear into an ordinary crowd. As she entered adulthood, Emily began craving something she had never truly experienced before: privacy. She dreamed about ordinary conversations without cameras, quiet evenings without social media speculation, and friendships that existed because people genuinely cared about her rather than the family name she carried. Those wishes seemed impossible until one unexpected afternoon changed everything. It happened during a local charity event that her parents had supported for years. Hundreds of volunteers filled the community center, arranging supplies, preparing meals, and greeting families who needed assistance. Emily had quietly slipped away from the media area to help organize donation boxes in the back storage room. That was where she first met Daniel. Unlike everyone else, Daniel didn't recognize her immediately. He simply smiled, introduced himself, and asked whether she needed help lifting several heavy boxes onto a nearby shelf. His kindness wasn't forced. His conversation wasn't awkward. Most importantly, he never once mentioned television, interviews, or celebrity. For the first time in years, Emily felt completely normal. The two spent the afternoon working side by side. Between organizing supplies and carrying donations, they talked about music, favorite books, travel dreams, and childhood memories. Hours passed so naturally that neither realized how late it had become until volunteers began cleaning up for the evening. When they finally said goodbye, Daniel simply wished her a safe drive home. No request for a photograph. No questions about fame. No curiosity about television. Just a sincere goodbye. Emily couldn't stop thinking about that conversation. A few days later, she found herself volunteering again, hoping fate might allow their paths to cross once more. It did. Daniel greeted her with the same warm smile as before, completely unaware that Emily had spent several days wondering whether she would see him again. Friendship came easily. Neither of them rushed anything. They laughed together while preparing meals for charity events, shared coffee after long volunteer shifts, and slowly learned about each other's hopes and fears. Emily discovered that Daniel worked as an architect, loved restoring old buildings, and believed every forgotten place deserved a second chance. Daniel learned that Emily secretly loved painting landscapes, collected vintage records, and often escaped into novels whenever the pressure of public attention became overwhelming. The more they talked, the more they realized how much they had in common. Yet one obstacle remained. Emily hadn't told him everything. Although Daniel eventually discovered who she really was, his reaction surprised her. He looked at her for a moment, smiled gently, and said, "That explains why people kept staring at us." Emily laughed nervously. "Does it change anything?" Daniel shook his head. "It changes how the world sees you," he replied. "It doesn't change the person I've been getting to know." Those words stayed with Emily long after they left the cafe that evening. For someone who had spent years wondering whether people cared about her or her family's public image, Daniel's honesty felt almost unbelievable. Their friendship slowly became something deeper. Instead of crowded restaurants, they preferred quiet bookstores. Instead of glamorous parties, they chose long walks through peaceful parks. Instead of posting photographs online, they created memories that belonged only to them. They discovered an old reading room inside a historic community library that very few visitors ever used. Surrounded by shelves filled with forgotten novels and warm afternoon sunlight filtering through tall windows, they found the peaceful place they had both been searching for. That room soon became their favorite destination. Whenever life became overwhelming, they met there. Emily brought homemade cookies. Daniel usually arrived carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate and another recommendation for a book she absolutely had to read. Hours disappeared as they discussed dreams for the future. Emily confessed she hoped one day people would know her for the work she accomplished rather than the family she belonged to. Daniel admitted he wanted to design affordable homes for families who